So Paris from the outside in, art and decolonization in post-war modernism. In 1947, the Senegalese intellectual Alioune Diop launched the journal Présence africaine at 25 bis Rue des Écoles in the Latin Quarter of Paris. In his introduction to the first issue, he wrote, "The idea for it goes back to 1942-43. We were in Paris, a certain number of overseas students who, from within the suffering of a Europe questioning its essence and authenticity of its values, got together to study the situation and characteristics that define ourselves." A cultural institution that continues to be published even today, Présence africaine was an important force in creating and advocating for a pan-African cultural presence. Located in Paris, the journal became a meeting place for artists and writers of African descent from Africa and the African diaspora, and created a set of shared aims for, quote, all men of goodwill, white, yellow, or black, likely to help us to define an African originality and to hasten its insertion into the modern world. In other words, this journal utilized its location at the metropolis, at the crossroads of Black migrations from around the world, to become a site of articulation for a cultural identity and a politics of resistance. Coming to Paris from Martinique, Haiti, French West Africa, and the United States, and elsewhere, many of these individuals only began to see themselves as part of an African world once they arrived in Paris. And in many cases, it was only then that they began to see the systematic injustices of the colonial system. In his book, Anti-Imperial Metropolis, Michael Goebel described the effect of coming to the metropolis as follows, and I quote, "In Paris, imperialism no longer looked like a series of isolated injustices, but a larger system that had to be addressed as such. Paris facilitated the creation of a common anti-imperialist language, explaining why Paris was crucial not only as a hub from which ideas resonated more widely, so it's not about a diffusion model, but rather also as a generator of a new anti-imperialist narrative through exchange." So, again, this idea that something is happening in Paris and we don't really know what that is. As Goebel explains, it was not just a pan-African, pan-Asian, or Latin American world that was opened up for political revolutionaries that he examines, but an anti-imperialist notion of a third world. Indeed, Paris was a breeding ground for trans-regional anti-colonial activity, such as this Union Intercoloniale newspaper entitled Le Paria, edited by Ho Chi Minh, with the help of many others, including a young Massali Hadj, who was one of the founding figures of the Algerian independence movement. And so you'll notice that the title is written in French, Chinese, and Arabic. Paris was an enormous draw for artists and intellectuals from the non-Western world after the war, whether or not they were part of the French colonial system, due to the mythology of Paris as an artistic center, to the claims of republicanism, which proclaimed liberté, égalité, and fraternité, and to post-war French cultural diplomacy.